Good afternoon. Detectives investigating the murder of a man in last week's so-called road rage attack have arrested a 27-year-old woman.
I saw the man hit me. I don't know what with, but playing cat and mouse with each other for a while. I didn't see anything. He's ruined my life.
When murder turned into manipulation on the 1st of December 1996, Tracie Andrews and her fiancé Lee Harvey were driving home after a night out when suddenly they were supposedly being pursued by another car. This would end in the murder of Lee Harvey and the whole nation questioning the narrative of the remaining survivor. This week's one is a bit of a weird one. I watched a lot of documentaries, I looked at loads of YouTube videos. I even looked at some of the articles that were released with the mugshots and everything. And I questioned a lot of it. It's a mind-boggling one still of why they did it. But once again, I would like to say that every opinion in this video is my opinion alone, no one else's. And I've done the research and stuff to try and back up what I am saying. However, some of these are assumptions, alleged. Okay, so let's get into it. Tracie Andrews was born on the 9th of April 1969 in the West Midlands on the outskirts of Birmingham. She was a middle child of 3 siblings. I couldn't find a lot to do with her childhood, how she was raised, or if it was happy or not happy. However, I did find out that her parents divorced when she was 6 years old due to them having a very severely volatile relationship and quite manipulative and abusive. This devastated Tracie, and it kind of paints this image of what she would expect from a relationship as she grew up, because from such a young age, that's all she ever knew. All she ever understood was what to expect in a relationship, was how her parents' relationship was. I couldn't find a lot of research into what happened to her after this point, or her childhood or school or anything like that, but she had aspirations to become a model, but originally started working as a barmaid. She was often described as a showstopper that would walk into the room and a lot of men's eyes would look at her, and she just had this aura about her where she was a showstopper. People would gravitate towards her and they just wanted to be near her or chat to her or get a number or go on a date with her. She just had that kind of image about her. She had a daughter in 1990, and her previous partner, I couldn't find his identity, which is fine. I think it's good to protect people's identities when it comes to children. However, a lot of her partners did come forward to describe her as being quite possessive and wouldn't stand for their other half to have a social life. She would constantly question where they are, what they're doing, and who are they with. The classic manipulation, abusive kind of tendencies that would come out of a relationship like that. She would often lash out with her partners with this explosive rage and anger, which would come out of nowhere. In October 1994, she began to have a relationship with Lee Harvey. Lee Harvey is our main person in our case today. He was described as a family man. He loved his family. He loved to be around them. It was what fueled him a lot of the time. He had a daughter already at this point in time, which he cared deeply for. So they met in this nightclub called Baker's in Birmingham, where they had a spark, which was kind of a love at first sight kind of spark. And they had some drinks, they danced, and just hit it off from there. They had such similar personalities. They both had children. They both were not quirky, but they were both quite witty about them, and they just bounced off of each other. As I said, he had a daughter with someone else prior to Tracie, so both their children would go on play dates and they would hang out with each other, and it seemed like their family was becoming one. They were basically sisters, and as I said, their family were finally complete. She then moved in with him after only 3 months of dating. Their on and off relationship was an example of an abusive relationship. They both were extremely volatile to each other and would consistently have heated arguments, which was sparked with fuel jealousy of other partners of the opposite sex. A lot of arguments would escalate into violence, and the police would be called numerous amount of times to the property to deal with situations of lashing out and volatile words. Family and friends would often describe their relationship as quite dysfunctional, and all of them were uneasy about Tracie Andrews' behaviour emotionally and how she handled a lot of the situations she was put in. She would go off the handle from the smallest argument or the smallest bit of jealousy. Like, an example of this would be they both get very jealous of their previous partners to who they have children with. They would consistently row about how close they both were to these ex-partners. However, this was for the sake of their children, Lee would always say. But he also would have quite a volatile interaction about that to her, why she was so close to her previous partner, but it was for the sake of their children. Tracie's mother, Irene, would constantly tell the press and the media that their love was too passionate and it was a toxic type of love with consistent fights. However, it's difficult to say with something like this because I don't feel like love should be branded as a toxic kind of love. It doesn't make sense like that. It's not healthy. There are toxic types of love, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that, especially with consistent fights. I think they loved each other, or they loved the idea of being in love with each other, but they couldn't handle their jealousy or them having other people in their lives. But he would consistently leave the home to stay with his mum multiple times, and she would also go and stay with friends and family after any minute row or anything that would get heated. But Lee would consistently tell his mum that he really, really loved her, and this is when he decided to propose to her so he could make a statement that she is his only, and that possessive kind of nature came out about it, and it was to prove to her that there was no one else in the picture, it's only her. And he thought that this would calm her down and make her believe there's no one else. He doesn't care about anyone else. All he cares about was her. Sunday, December 1st, 1996. The pair had gotten into a heated argument. Lee had suggested they go to the Marlborough local pub as it would be a change of scene and would help them reconcile in a public environment and just a whole different environment. I think it does take a lot of perspective with stuff like that. If I was to disagree with something, going on a walk kind of clears your head. So maybe he had this ideology that if he went to a pub, maybe it was in public so she wouldn't kick off as much and they could actually discuss some of the issues. However, it wasn't until the pair had headed home in the early hours of the morning where they were supposedly followed down Cooper's Lane, which resulted in a road rage incident with two men who Tracie would later on describe as fat passengers with staring eyes. The two men were driving a Ford Sierra behind them, where they were consistently honking at them and swearing at them and just being aggressive through the windows and just out of the window. She had stated it ended down the road with an induced range where they were pulled over and they confronted Lee. This is when the men had got out the car and attacked them on the country lane. Lee Harvey sustained 42 stab wounds and Andrews had injuries to her face where she had been punched and attacked, and apparently these men called her derogatory terms. This is when a witness who lived in a nearby house heard the commotion and ran over to help where he could, and he called for an ambulance. The 3rd of December 1996. 2 days after the incident, Tracie Andrews was scheduled to sit down in front of the press to plead the public for help to find these two men and who had killed her fiancé down this road. She recounted the evening of the murder, what had happened, and how these two men had so much road rage that it ended in this murder of her partner. When she appeared into the conference, she was battered and she was bruised, and she had this look of anger and sadness to her. However, a lot of people started to question this. She was sat next to Lee Harvey's mum, holding hands, trying to show they were a family unit and they were doing this together. However, her perception came across quite negative to the media and to the public. She would consistently state in this press conference that she held him and didn't know what to do. She wanted to save his life but didn't know what to do. She froze because she was so panicked and stressed in that moment. Her whole demeanour screamed victim throughout this conference. However, press journalists afterwards were concerned about this story she had painted. They said a lot of it didn't make sense. She came across as quite angry and defensive rather than emotional. But in regards to that, I feel like people grieve differently. It's hard to tell. She still might be grieving. However, the public and the press were questioning her intentions and what she was telling the truth about. Throughout the whole conference, by the end of it, Tracie Andrews' confidence had grew as if she was getting away with the narrative she was trying to paint. She was manipulating and scripting a different picture to the public with fake pleas for help.
And whoever this person is that was with you, and you obviously know him, but he's ruined my life. Please just tell us who he is, because you won't get in any trouble at all. It was not your fault.
Over the next 2 weeks prior to the press conference, police carried out investigations to try and track down the murderer of Lee Harvey. These two men that she stated with staring eyes and quite large. December 5th, 1996. With a lot of suspicion mounting onto Tracie Andrews, she unfortunately tried to exit this world a couple of days after the press conference. This is when police wanted to question her more about some more details and to try and fine-tune what she'd told. She was admitted to hospital where they found that she'd taken an overdose of pills. She was in hospital for 2 days when police first questioned her about the murder. After being discharged from hospital, she was charged with the murder of Lee Harvey. Everyone didn't know what had happened, how the police had come to this final decision that she was the murderer. A lot of things went on behind the scenes, and after that press conference, a lot of people had come forward questioning Tracie and questioning what she had done. There was also, I believe, a reenactment on Crime Watch to the murder and how it had happened with the two men, but no one believed it, and it just wasn't adding up. Nothing was making sense. So what really happened? So on the night of the murder, the 1st of December 1996, the early hours, the couple had a dispute in the pub, which led them to leave abruptly. Onlookers state that there was a sense of tension and uneasiness between the pair, which led them to leave so quickly and fast out of there. They were heading down Cooper's Lane, where they continued to argue about the details in the pub they were disagreeing about. This was predominantly about whether he really loved Tracie. Tracie was pestering him and asking him, "Do you really love me? Do you really love me?" She had a penknife in her pocket ready for whatever was going to attack, so there seems to be a bit of premeditation to this. It was these penknife, which Lee Harvey's mother later stated in an interview, he had bought one for himself and two more for his brothers on a trip to Spain somewhere as a memory and as just a gift for his brothers. He then stopped the vehicle because the argument was so heated that he needed to pull over and concentrate and try and calm the situation before it escalated any further. Tracie Andrews then got out of the vehicle and tried to walk away, to which he followed her but then decided to retreat back to the car. But as he walked back to the car, she launched her vicious attack onto him. She used the penknife and stabbed him, focusing on his neck first and his jugular, causing a lot of blood loss. He had wounds to the back of his head, his chest, his left side of his body and his shoulder, proving he was walking away from the situation. That's where she could attack him, and that's all she could see. It was assumed as soon as he hit the floor was when she continued the attack. Evidence proved there wasn't another car phone them through CCTV evidence and through onlookers around the area. It was her who in fact had carried out this vicious attack onto Lee Harvey. Still, the facts that are correct as above was that the commotion did alert a man who lived nearby about the incident. He discovered the scenes where he saw Tracie Andrews cradling Lee Harvey, screaming for help. It was noted that Lee Harvey's car wasn't parked in a hurry, but it was neatly on the side of the road, not how Andrews had depicted it as a rash decision to pull over abruptly because of these men who were in a state of road rage. The 1st of July 1997, the prosecution was able to completely debunk her story she had told and break down how implausible it was. 7 minutes passed between him being brutally attacked and Andrew screaming out for help. 7 minutes this attack was carried out. She pled not guilty to all the charges and attempted to maintain her earlier story of being chased in an act of road rage. The police had discovered that when the police arrived on scene, Andrews had hid the penknife which she attacked Lee Harvey with in her boot. She later discharged it into the toilets at the hospital, getting rid of the murder weapon, which would be the only thing predominantly that would tie her to the scenes. Tracie Andrews went on trial at Birmingham Crown Court for murder and was found guilty on the 29th of July 1997. She was sentenced to a life imprisonment with a recommendation she served at least 14 years. Andrews appealed this sentence, claiming she was a victim of a miscarriage of justice because of the damaging publicity that surrounded this case and all the images the press were trying to paint of her since that press conference where she was playing the victim. She began to argue that it was self-defense and Lee tried to attack her prior to this, and she just reacted to his argumentative state. But this was proven false due to her attacking him from the back and where his injuries were located. Almost 14 years later, in 2012, she was released after serving 14 years in prison and now lives with a new name, a new partner, and has her life back, whereas Lee Harvey never got his life back and his daughter doesn't have her dad anymore. It's kind of heartbreaking at the end because she's now out, she's living her life, and the only reason I discovered this case was because I saw an article about her showing off her new partner in public. I hope she's changed for the better since her 14 years in prison. It doesn't bring back the life of Lee Harvey. It doesn't bring back that little girl's life from losing her dad. It's a bit heartbreaking, and how she believed she could sit in front of the nation and say her piece and think she'd get away with it. I don't understand the mind of a killer. I could never ever put myself in a position where I would hurt someone I loved like that. I wouldn't do it. So my question for you is, why do you think she did this? Why do you think she just attacked him on the random day? Was it a fuel of jealousy? Was it because she wanted the power over him? That's one thing that a lot of people speculate, is that she wanted more power over him and wanted to control him a lot more. So what do you think? I can't believe she almost got away with manipulating a whole nation like that, and having the guts to sit up there and say a bunch of lies. But however, this week's case was an interesting one. Very short, very interesting one, but a lot of people were hurt in the process of this. So let me know what you think. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you soon.